Okay, so society often pushes this idea, maybe subtly, that, finding a romantic partner is the main goal. But we're seeing more and more people actually choosing to stay single their whole lives. What does that really mean for them, especially later in life? That's what we want to get into today.
And it's a really important question. I mean, understanding who lifelong singles are beyond just assumptions,
Yeah.
it's vital, especially when you think about things like mental health and what kind of social support they might actually need.
Exactly. So to help us unpack this, we're diving into a really interesting study. It's pretty recent, from December 2024, published in Psychological Science. And this wasn't some small survey, was it? It used data from the Survey of Health, Aging, and Retirement in Europe, SHARE, massive scale.
Oh, absolutely massive. Share is, well, it's kind of the gold standard for this stuff. We're talking 77,064 people, mainly aged 50 plus, across 27 different countries. It gives you this incredible long-term view, really robust insight.
Definitely. So for our deep dive today, we're going to focus specifically on what this study found comparing lifelong singles with ever-partnered people, looking at two main things, those big five personality traits, you know, extroversion, conscientiousness, all that, and overall life satisfaction.
And what's really striking is how clear some of the patterns were. The study suggests that lifelong singles, yeah, they often show somewhat different personality profiles compared to those who've been partnered.
Okay, so let's get into that. What were the main differences they found in those personality traits?
Well, the research pointed towards lifelong single scoring, on average, a bit lower on extroversion, conscientiousness, and openness to experiences. And look, this isn't about saying one is better than the other, it's about understanding tendencies. Like, maybe being less extroverted means you don't get as much energy from big social events, or lower conscientiousness might mean perhaps a different way of approaching planning things out.
Right. And you mentioned openness. There was something specific about that finding, wasn't there? Depending on the definition of single.
Exactly right. The link with openness wasn't quite as straightforward. It kind of shifted based on whether single meant strictly never ever partnered romantically versus maybe just never married. Which really shows, doesn't it, that singlehood isn't just one thing. Experiences can be quite varied within that group.
That makes sense.
Mhm.
Okay, so beyond personality, the study also looked at, well, how happy people were with their lives overall, life satisfaction.
Yes, and here too, the findings were pretty consistent. Lifelong singles, again on average, reported lower life satisfaction, which, naturally makes you think about where people draw their sense of fulfillment from. But what's really fascinating, I think, is the nuance within the single group. The differences they saw were actually stronger for people defined as never partnered, like never had a romantic partner at all, stronger than for those who were just never cohabitating or never married.
Huh. That's a really key distinction. So what does that suggest about the experience?
Well, it highlights that it's not a simple category, is it? Being never partnered might imply a genuinely lifelong solo path, whereas, never married or never cohabitated could still include really significant long-term relationships. They just weren't formalized in that specific way, leading to potentially very different social lives, different emotional landscapes.
And the study found these effects weren't exactly the same for everyone, right? There were other factors involved.
That's right. Things like gender, age, even the overall rate of singlehood in their country and the gender ratio in that country, they all played a part. It suggests the social context, the environment really matters. Being a lifelong single woman where marriage is, say, heavily expected might feel different than being a single man in a big city with lots of other singles.
So pulling this all together from our dive today, this big study reveals something important. Lifelong singles aren't just people without a partner. They often present with somewhat distinct profiles on traits like extroversion, conscientiousness, and maybe openness. And they also tend to report lower life satisfaction compared to people who've been partnered at some point.
And knowing this is really crucial. It helps us think more clearly about potential mental health considerations. And it definitely underscores the need for evolving social support systems, especially for older people, given how diverse relationships are becoming.
Which leaves us with a big question to ponder, doesn't it? If these findings hold true, as the number of lifelong singles grows, how might our societal norms, our expectations around partnership need to shift to better support everyone's well-being, particularly as they get older? Something to think about until our next deep dive.